Hey everybody, welcome to the In All Things podcast. It's time to see God in everything. How's it going, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of the In All Things podcast. My name is Mitch Frost, and I'm here, as usual, with Pastor Steve Markle. How's it going?
Yeah, I'm doing great. It's a brand new episode, brand new season, brand new year.
It's been a couple months since we've done something like this, so it's a little bit weird getting back into it.
It is.
Setting up all the cameras and lights again.
Yes.
Thanks to Jared and Devi. But yeah, it's a new year, and we're excited for this.
Yeah, I've missed this. I didn't realize until I was up here the other day for something, and I was like, man, I miss doing this. So I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, we really got into the routine end of last year of every week recording an episode and coming up with something new. And I do think it was good to take off a month and a half, really, almost 2 months at this point.
Yes.
Just to recalibrate and just kind of come up with a new direction and things we want to do. So we're excited to be back.
Yeah, there was a lot going on. I mean, the holiday season is pretty busy for us on the church staff, and then giving a break to it is good. So
fill some non-church staff people in on what the Christmas season looks like for a pastor.
Yeah, I mean, well, obviously, your two biggest days of the year are Easter and Christmas. And Christmas tends to be even bigger, a little bit bigger than Easter in terms of attendance. You got a lot of people from out of town with families coming. And so, you know, you put a lot into that. We put a lot into Christmas Eve, and it's not just Christmas Eve. It's the day before service and then rehearsing. But we started back in August. We had staff meeting. We called Christmas in August, and then Christmas in September. We kept working on that. So it's a big buildup, but the month of December just seems to come at you really quick. Yeah. So
and then for us on a personal level here at Sycamore Creek, right before the Christmas season, we had a big worship night as well. So it's been a busy couple months.
Actually, yeah, like right after our last podcast, I think it was the next week, we had a worship night the week before Thanksgiving, which we put a lot into that, a lot of work. So we're not a big staff, so it takes a lot of work from all of us. Yeah.
But I do think this was probably one of the most well-planned, successful, most thematic years that we've ever had with kind of those big events. Would you say?
I would say we're putting more into that. Having a creative arts director on staff is helping us a lot to have more time and energy and ability to do more with video. And people are noticing, and I appreciate that. But yeah, I love that we actually themed it out really well, especially Christmas coming up the whole month. I got a lot of feedback, you know, because we talked about the whole historical timeline of Jesus from Genesis all the way through Revelation and really capped that off well, I think, on Christmas Eve. So I know people appreciated what did they learn. A lot of people sent me emails asking me, can you send me that list from Genesis to Revelation? Will you email me that? Or can you send me that picture, that timeline that you had up on the screen? So I love that. People are digging in, learning things they hadn't learned before. Because all of us as pastors, we love Christmas, and we also are like, oh, how do I say this in a creative way? How do I tell the Christmas story different this year so that it impacts people? Because they know the basics of the story. But anyway.
Yeah, we really dug deep into the fact that Jesus wasn't born on Christmas. He was born as a baby, but he's always been there, right? And and the whole Bible popoints to him. And so we really dug into that. I think a lot of people responded to it really well.
They did. I enjoyed it. Yeah.
So how are you? We haven't recorded an episode, like you said, since really middle to end of November. How are you doing personally? What's these last couple of months looked like for you? Christmas, New Year's, all of the things, time off here at the office. We had a week off. How are you doing?
I'm better than you, I think.
That's
true.
Right?
I mean, like, you know, I don't mean, what I'm saying is that, you know, Christmas, so as a church, we saw momentum in November and early December. It was like, okay, things are starting to come back attendance-wise, and you're starting to feel it. And Christmas was good, but right before Christmas, we all know the OMICRON variant started taking hold. And so the numbers at Christmas were good, better than the year before, but not what it could be. And then, boy, sickness has just been rampant in everybody, in our families. And so, like, we were fortunate as a family to have Christmas Day. But from then on, like, everybody was sick except for me. I don't know how I escaped it, either COVID or sinus infections, bronchitis. I was around it, isolating in my house, and it was a different. So we had a week off. The whole staff gets off the week between Christmas and New Year's.
It was a really, really fun break this year because we were all sick pretty much.
It was And it was
I mean, a few staff members did avoid sickness. I think Jared wasn't too sick. You weren't too sick, but we had that Sunday after Christmas, and like half the staff was here. Like,
it was
down.
It was frantic. I remember So people are like, how was your break? Well, it was boring.
Yeah.
Because all these plans of get-togethers with family after Christmas, different things that week we always do.
Yep.
Game nights, like nothing. And then everybody in my house was like hacking. So I'm like, stay away from me. I don't know how. And I know like you moved, right? You want to talk about that?
Yeah, we moved in from our apartment to our first house. And we had to be out of our apartment, so we moved when we both had COVID, and
Yes.
lifting a box was a big task.
You and Lexi were pretty rough,
yes,
and Jared and I helped you, and it was a pleasure to help you, but we were right around you, close to you, and yet we did not get it from you. So
yeah, it was a whirlwind.
You had to do it. You didn't have a choice. So
yeah. But I mean, retrospect, it's like, you know, we personally, we really love New Year's Eve. We went really into that, and Christmas was just a little bit off this year with just both families being sick and stuff. And so it was like, oh man, a little bit of a bummer just because people get so excited for this time of year, and then there's just a lot of
families that were like, I know some other families that just celebrated Christmas like this weekend. They had their Christmas because they didn't get a chance to have it, and then. That Sunday, January the 2nd was interesting. It was that Saturday night. I was texting with Christy and Jared and other staff members too, because we knew you were out, Devi was out, Amy was out, and we're like, and then volunteers were calling off like crazy. We're like, okay, can we pull this off tomorrow?
Yeah.
And there was debate, but thankfully we had a decent number of people here, and we had people doing jobs they don't normally do, but you know, sometimes it's funny because this is technology driven, and so much is. And I'm like, if Jared can lead music and I can preach, we should be able to have a service whether we have all the bells and whistles that we normally have. But we did, and but I don't like it. It was nice yesterday to have everybody back in full force.
Yeah. It's funny because throughout this whole COVID thing, which we're coming up on 2 years,
we're coming up on starting year 3.
Is it really?
It's like going to start.
Oh my gosh.
We're going into the 3rd year of this.
Anyway, let's pretend that didn't just happen.
I know.
But this whole time, like personally being 22 years old, I haven't really had a second thought about if I get it. Like it's just, I've been told, hey, you're young, you're healthy. Right. It's going to be a cold and you're going to move on. It was pretty rough. I can't lie. Like at fever, loss of smell and taste, fatigue was crazy. It was pretty rough. I can't lie. Like even this week, I'm still feeling like just the fog that you have in your head when you get sick like that. Right. I mean, yesterday on stage, I was talking about the hurricanes in Kentucky.
Kentucky all the time.
I'm just not quite there yet, and I want to be so bad, so it's frustrating.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's a rough time right now.
That's what it's like when you get older anyway. So it's just a little preview. You lose it.
There you go.
But no, anyway, I'm glad that we're back. And the year 3 thing is just one of those things that I was texting with some pastor friends in Virginia, and they were shutting down maybe for the first 2 weeks in January because it's like so much of their congregation sick. They had a service and one did, and it was like hardly anybody there. And it's just you just feel like you're getting beyond it, and all of a sudden, no, you're not. So it's a mental game where you have to just remember again what you're here for. What is our purpose? It's not just about how many people are sitting in those seats. There's more to it than that. And so here we are.
It's funny because even like from I do student ministry here, like. There's a lot of students out right now with COVID. We had a bunch of core students last night that texted me throughout the week, hey, I can't be there. My whole family tested positive for COVID. Like more than at the beginning of this. I have students now, high school students that are testing positive, and they're all sick. And it's just crazy. And yesterday with the 5th and 6th graders on Sunday morning, we went around and did highs and lows, best part of the week, worst part of the week. And we had 8 people in there, and at least 5 of them were like, well, my low is that, my whole family's quarantined for Christmas break. Like, it's just everywhere right now.
Everywhere, yeah.
It's crazy.
So, with that being said, and we were talking right before we started, and Jared was saying too, about the countries that had this variant first, how it kind of got bad quickly, but then went over. So, we're hoping, hey, that would be nice, but then, hold on, is there another one coming? I don't know.
Who knows?
I can't.
We can't predict it. We know that at this point.
I think I keep hearing, is this something we're going to have to live with, like for long term? It's going to be kind of like annual flu and different things. So we just got to, it's life.
But hey, before all of the COVID and the Christmas craziness that happened, there was another big event that we both experienced at separate times, Spider-Man.
Oh,
which
yes.
was the first episode of this podcast in general. And now for the first episode of season 2, we can actually talk about it.
That's right.
We're not going to spoil it because it is still only a couple weeks since it's happened, but you should know
watched
it.
it
If you
yet,
haven't watched it
come
at this
on.
point, it's your fault.
Come on. Yeah.
Man, what a movie. It's funny because I'm a big Marvel fan. Always have been since a kid. It's just one of my favorite things. But Spider-Man has always been my favorite superhero.
Right.
And so all the hype around this particular movie was really exciting for me. And kind of a funny story. When, the release date came out, December 17th was going to be the day it came out, which means December 16th was the first time they were going to show it, all this stuff.
Right.
And one of my close friends got married. And turns out that he got married on December 17th. And so we were kind of wondering, like, okay, what's going to happen with Spider-Man? Because we can't wait that long to go see it. And so the day before was the rehearsal dinner. And we reached out to him and we were just like, hey, I hope you know that your rehearsal dinner, we're all driving down to where you live and staying there, is the night that Spider-Man comes out. So we got to figure this out. We got to go see it. And me and Devi actually took it upon us like, hey, we'll buy all the tickets for the groomsmen for whoever wants to go. We'll make this work. And he's like, yeah, that sounds awesome. After the rehearsal dinner, we'll go see it that night, opening night. It'll be so fun. And he's like, let me get a number to you of how many tickets we're going to need.
Right.
And we're like, okay, no problem. There's I think there was 8 or 9 groomsmen. That's awesome. We'll buy them all and then they can pay us back and we'll make it work. And he calls us like a day later and he's like, hey, so there's 34 people that we need to get tickets for to go see this movie. And at that point, I was so dedicated to seeing it opening night that, I bought 34 tickets and we went and saw it. So I got paid back.
Everybody paid you back.
Every
That's the
dollar
most
came back.
important thing, yeah.
But, man, I was dedicated to seeing that movie.
It was living up to your expectations.
It beat every expectation I had. It was awesome.
So, I mean, I am not like you in terms of fandom, but I wanted to see it. And the opening weekend on that Saturday evening, I went with my son Nick and his friend Sam and some other people, and we saw it, and it was awesome. I mean, the way they did bring in the other old Superman, Spider-Mans, and into it was incredible, and it was funny, it was entertaining the whole time. Yeah.
It's good stuff.
Yeah.
Pretty awesome. It's breaking records. It's most if you go try to buy tickets right now, most theaters are still mostly sold out.
Yeah.
Like it's pretty awesome. So anyway, but so that's a good thing to talk about in the midst of all the craziness that's happening,
It's nice to have those diversions.
But then one thing that happened last night, which is a bit of a downer, but I do want to talk about it for a moment, is Bob Saget.
Oh yeah.
Who passed away.
Yeah.
65 years old.
Right.
And as of now, the only thing that they've really released is that they found him in a hotel room.
Yeah,
And
no foul play.
No foul play, no drugs.
Right.
So it's a bit of a mystery.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit
He had just done
curious
his
to
comedy
see.
show like the night before, and he's in Jacksonville, Florida, I believe. And
So it's just kind of a tragic.
Yeah,
because
because I remember watching Full House, and then I mean, like for our family, when our family was younger, like I think it was Sunday Night America's Funniest Home Videos.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
That was like he was on that for a long time, and he was like nerdy funny, and it was so good, and it was good, clean family fun. So
it's just one of those things, like kind of like a Chadwick Boseman who passed away in 2020, and Kobe Bryant of just kind of
a little young. I mean, last week somebody else who was older but still icon, John Madden. That was just like, whoa, John Madden. Such. And even my son who's 13 is like, John Madden, because he has Madden 22.
Right.
And it's like, that is a big deal. I mean, these people like that. So it happens.
It's sad.
Sad.
John Stamos, who, if you watch Full House, you know that's Uncle Jesse.
Yeah.
He tweeted, which is really sad. He tweeted, I am broken. I am gutted. I am complete and in utter shock. I will never, ever have another friend like him. I love you so much, Bobby.
Wow.
It's really sad.
Yeah, I hear he was just a great guy.
Yeah. So it's especially sad when somebody passes away like that who has the reputation of just being a good person. Somebody that touched lives and had friends and was just awesome.
Yep.
That makes it even more like, we lost a good one,
Yes.
But hey, let's start with our question that we always go back to. How can God be seen in a time like this? And, Bob Saget passing away, somebody who was awesome, and this COVID variant that seems to be worse than when this all started a little bit. How can God be seen in this?
Wow. Well, I mean, I think we keep coming back to the same thing. Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Nothing surprises God. So, God knows what's going to happen, which is something that's hard for our minds to get wrapped around. But I think it's always for us a call back to What are the basics that we need to be doing in our lives? Our relationship with God, where is it? What does it need to be? And when you hear somebody dying young, I mean, at 65, I used to think, when I was your age, I used to think that was old. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's that old anymore. And when you see that, you think, okay, am I living my life the way that I should live it? Living it to the fullest, but living it in a way that honors God. Mm-hmm. And am I seeing God working in every area of my life? Am I making an impact on other? What would people say? What would they tweet about me? What would they post about me if I were to die, like at my age right now? What would people be saying about me? So it really makes you think about stuff like that.
Yeah. You brought up a point of how God isn't surprised by the things that are happening, and I completely agree because we believe in a God who's all-knowing and all-powerful. Right. But I think that with that comes the question of, do you think that God is sad about what's happening to a certain degree? Because I do think that this picture of God isn't surprised of anything that's happening, I think it could make God seem like he's just kind of up there like, oh yeah, I knew that was coming. Buckle up.
Yeah, I mean, God is, a God of emotions. I think we have to look at God, what makes him sad? We look at what made Jesus sad. Mm-hmm. What made Jesus sad? When was that famous two-word verse in the Bible written? John 11:35. Jesus wept. When did that happen? Do you remember?
It was when blanking on his name, Lazarus died.
Lazarus died, right? His friend. So he wept over that.
Right.
One of our close friends just lost his mom to COVID. Mm-hmm. And she was 70, but she was healthy. Yeah. December the 20th, she's making Christmas cookies. And January 1st, she passed away. And I mean, he was at church yesterday, and he was saying how emotional it was. And I just wanted to go over and hug him. He said a lot of people did, and it just made it more emotional, but in a good way. I said we were texting about it, part of the process. Yeah. And I believe, that God feels for us, and he is touched by our emotions. Mm-hmm. But yet, life and death it's all part of the plan.
Yeah. I mean, there's the very old saying and prayer that we have of break my heart for what breaks yours, God. And we can't pray that if we believe that God doesn't have emotions and doesn't feel things, right?
Right.
I believe that he's not just this impersonal God. We believe in a God who does experience things not with us, but he's there with us, right? We believe in a God who's personal and intimate and walks with us. And if that's true, then when there is natural disasters, hurricanes in Kentucky, different things like that, I have to believe in a God who
absolutely. I think when yesterday in the news, there was a big fire in Brooklyn, and like 17 or 19 people have died from that, and children, and that's sad. God's heart's broken, not just for those things though, but I think God's heart's broken when the way we react to things and the sinful things that really break God's heart. And even with all that's happened in the world with COVID, I think it's heartbreaking, I'm sure, to see the way people are hateful to each other about things that are happening in this world.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's been a lot of talk around that, especially in the church world, of how demonizing we are to people in this day and age, and Christians do it all the time. Political figures, whoever it may be, how demonizing we are to people, and how little do we know. We're just making a comment, making a statement. Oh, this is my feeling. This is how I feel. Well, that's a person, and we're being just as hateful and harmful as anybody else, know. And it's definitely a gut check.
And not to jump too far ahead. But in February, we're going to do a series called Peopleology, and we're going to talk about, for 4 weeks, how would Jesus treat people? What would Jesus say about relationships? All that he taught about relationships. And I'm really excited about that because we tend to, in February, around Valentine's Day, do things that are related to relationships. This one's not going to be about marriage in particular. It's going to be about all of our relationships. And what did Jesus teach about that? And how did he act toward people? And I think, boy, we need that.
Oh, yeah. And he's got a lot to say.
He's
got a lot. He does. For our students, we're doing a series called Equations, and we're going to talk about what you need to add, what you need to subtract, what you need to multiply in your relationship. So we're very excited for that. It's a good time of year. But so just for a couple minutes today, as we really get rolling in season 2, what I want to do is I just want to talk about kind of our ideas, maybe some of our vision for what this year on the In All Things podcast is going to look like. And so starting with just the first thing, what is the purpose of this podcast? I feel like every couple months it's good to take a step back and just figure out, okay, where are we going? Where do we want to go? Why did we do this in the first place? And I feel like starting season 2 in 2022 is a good time to just ask ourselves, what was the purpose of this? When you and I sat down and decided, hey, let's do something like this, why did we start that conversation?
Well, I think one of the things is we want to connect with our church family more than just on Sunday. And I think we feel like, it's funny because I grew up in church where it was Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. So there was a connection during the week. Now we do have small groups, but in small groups, you're not connecting with the church as a whole. So I feel like that's a way for us to get into the lives of people in our church, share something from our lives, also something maybe biblical, hopefully that will impact them in the way they think about life. So I think that's important. One of the things we decided to do was format, just a simple change, is we're recording on Mondays and getting it out by Thursday so that it's more current.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we would talk about things and then we'd do them early and then they'd be out 2 weeks later. And it's kind of like, oh, that happened. Nobody's even talking about that anymore.
Yeah,
so
that was a learning curve we had the first season, is especially towards the end, we got so far ahead of ourselves recording-wise, trying to plan and get ahead.
Right.
And then what would we be talking about in an episode that got released 3 weeks after recording? Nobody was talking about it anymore.
No, we thought it might still be relevant, but it wasn't. So
we are shifting a little bit. And I'm excited for that.
I am too. And I want to make sure that we are really talking about things that people care about in our church that can impact them. So not that we didn't, but I think we can do better.
Yeah.
And so I want to get better at this. I want to, I think, make sure. And you have a great plan. Like Mitch put together a 16 episode plan, which we will vary from, I'm sure, not do exactly what's on there, but at least we have a plan. Bring in some different guests that can speak to different things, maybe know more about subjects or maybe their testimony, different things, people in the church, outside the church. So to make it interesting in that way.
Yeah. I think we both have a heart for this idea that nothing is off the table in the conversation that surrounds our faith in Jesus and the Bible and all these things. I think that God honors questions. I think he honors when we explore and we wrestle with things. And so we wanted to create a place where we really aren't scared to talk about some different things that maybe wouldn't be fit well on stage on a Sunday morning, And so I think that's been a big thing that's kind of kept us moving forward. And I know that we have a lot of questions that our church asked that we have in the vault ready to go this season of just, we don't want to be scared to ask the hard questions and figure out how can we see God in all things. And so I think we keep coming back to that place of having real, raw, vulnerable conversations with different guests, different perspectives, but just coming back to this place that we want to dig deep and we want to figure it out.
Right. I think you and I, in terms of conversation, go back a ways, and you've known me long enough to know that I'm not a know-it-all that has all the answers. And so this last few years especially, I've said the phrase, I don't know, more than I've ever said. Because you get through all this with COVID and you talk to other people in ministry, other pastors, and everybody in life, and like, I don't know. I don't know what's happening in this world. But I think it's important to talk about that and admit we don't know. And even some of the tough topics that will come up that we'll discuss this season, there are going to be times when it's like, the Bible says this. It doesn't speak exactly to what we're talking about, but it gives these principles. Yeah. And so how do we apply them, and how do we do it in a loving way? Because sin is sin. We're not going to water it down here. That's not what this is about. There's things that we know that are right and wrong. We're not going to hide from that. But how do we deal with it? How do we deal with the things that keep coming at us? So
And I think we always come back to the place. It's the reason why the podcast is called this. We truly believe that the God that we serve, the God of the Bible, works in all things for the good of those who love him. Yes. We really believe that.
He's not a compartment too. It's in all things. It's not a 1 hour compartment in our lives where it's a Sunday thing. Right.
Yeah. And speaking of the 1 hour on a Sunday thing,
there you go.
The last part I wanted to talk about today was the series that we're in here at Sycamore called the 167. And so where did this idea come from? What led you to this place of wanting to do this? Have you done something like this before? Just kind of give some of your insight of what led to, January 2022, this is the series I want to do for our church.
Well, so we talked about wanting to, at the beginning of the year, do a series on spiritual habits. That's important. I mean, bringing everybody back to the basics, sometimes we might think, they're basics. Everybody knows. No, they don't. And even if they do, they need to be reminded. They need to be motivated, need to be encouraged, need to be preached at. I need to be preached at, reminded. So anyway, that was the idea. What we're going to do? A series on the basics, prayer and, small groups, serving God, worship, all those things. So then we thought, well, what do we call it? How do we make this? And then I'll give credit where credit is due. Steve Lamar, one of our part-time people here that works with some of our production and all that, online production.
Shout out Steve Lamar.
Yeah, there he is. Hope he watches. So he had this idea that he got from he saw this graphic one time for 167. He had told me about it before, ways back, and then it just came back to me like, this would be perfect. And then, I started doing the math. if people only put in 1 hour a week with God, like if they come to church for that hour, and we know not everybody comes every week, but we're given the benefit of the doubt. They're coming or they're watching online for 1 hour. That is, if 1 hour out of 168 hours, that's less than 1% of your week. And the idea is, well, what do we do with the 167 other hours? Obviously, we're not going to be in Bible study. The other 160, we got to sleep, we got to work. We know that. But what are we doing to invest in that relationship? So that's the idea.
Yeah,
and
I think it's a great idea, and I think it's something that's so challenging for us in 2022 as the American church, because I really, really do think that more than we would ever admit or like to talk about, we are so good at, hey, this is my time with God, my 1 hour on Sunday morning or whenever that time may be for you. And then you're just going to go on about your life and you'll come back to it next week. I think way more people do that than we want to think about.
Yeah, I don't think I think we live in a bubble because we work on a church staff and everything is about God. Yeah. I mean, not that every conversation 100% is all the time, but pretty much our work is about promoting Jesus. I mean, it's about telling people about Jesus. It's about helping people grow in their faith. So we're thinking about it. And I know you are, and I go home at night. It doesn't mean I stop thinking about it. And when I'm in the car driving, I mean, sometimes I'm listening to worship music or listening to podcasts from other church leaders, and I'm always thinking, how do I push forward the message of Christ? But everybody else has other jobs. They can't do that in their job. So how do you implement Jesus into your life in other areas? So
it's a great idea. I think it's a really good way to start the year. All the things, and last week, or I guess yesterday, you touched on this idea of fasting. And it's a really, really challenging message to deliver and to give to a congregation, because it's a very neglected practice of Jesus. It's a very kind of foreign idea to where we are. And so I'm just going to say this right now. I think you did a fantastic job of delivering kind of the biblical precedent of what fasting is. And I think one of the strongest points that you made, and maybe a point that not a lot of people are going to digest, is Jesus said when, not if. And I think he expected Christ's followers to fast, to commit themselves to this idea. And we're just kind of like, oh, why would we ever do that? And so I think you did a fantastic job of just kind of creating this idea of what it really is, the benefits of it, why we do it, how we're expected to do it, we're called to do it, all these different things. How challenging was it for you to kind of write or come up with something like that?
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. It was challenging because I never preached an entire message on it. Like I touched it, when we read the Sermon on the Mount and Jesus teaches about it, and I used that yesterday, obviously, but I've never put it all together. And we called it Fasting 101 because it was like a teaching. I was more teaching than preaching in some ways yesterday, which is fine. But trying to cram all it in. So it was a challenge, looking at Old Testament, New Testament. I was learning because honestly, I've never heard direct messages about it either. Yeah. Like that much emphasis on it. And we've never done that here. And what you said, it was what I was going to mention here, is that phrase when, not if you fast, but when you fast. And I thought, but I don't know. Would you feel convicted? Because
absolutely.
I don't do this. This is not a normal practice in my life. Randomly, I have.
Yeah,
random.
Me too. Yeah.
Very random.
Yeah.
Like, of everything that I've done, spiritually speaking, as a believer and as a pastor, I'm like, Steve, wow. Yeah. When have you really fasted? Well, you have, but not very much.
Right.
So, again, it's not legalistic. It's not let's schedule it and always do this and that. You can, but the point of it is to get closer to God. And there's so many points that we talked about. I mean, I was like, I don't like giving a message with 10 points. Like that's too much, right? But 10 reasons why you should fast. And that's how we concluded it. And there's all these different reasons. It's not just one reason.
Right.
And so I am so excited about this right now because 359 last count I heard people signed up that they're participating in the fast. They're not telling us what they're doing.
Right.
That's not the point of a fast, but they're all fasting. 359 people in our church, and they're getting a daily message from us in the morning.
Yeah. So let's say somebody's watching or listening right now. They did not come to Sycamore yesterday. They could go listen to the message if they wanted to, but they're in their car driving to work, and they're kind of wondering, why should I fast, Steve? Like, you're kind of bringing up this idea that it's something that we're expected to do, but that's not really enough. Why should I? Well, what would you say to them?
Well, it's always attached to prayer. So every time there's fasting, there's prayer involved. And so one of the questions I asked yesterday was, how many of you would say that your prayer life could use some improvement? Like everybody, like all of us say that. Well, this is a way to do that. So you fast. So you're giving up food, or you're giving up something else, but typically it's food. And doesn't mean you're giving up food for 21 days. Like, we're not doing that. Some people might, but we're giving up food for certain meals of the day or certain kinds of food that are very tempting us. And whenever we have that deep desire for whatever that food is, or we're really hungry because we're fasting lunch, we take that time and we pray, and we're sending out a daily prayer request and a Bible verse. But that's not enough. That's just to get you started praying. But you start to be in that place where you realize that, like, man, I can do this better. I can pray more. And even last night, I was laying in bed with my phone and I had my prayer list, and I was updating it and adding all these things to pray for to it. So, like, already I'm like, okay, wow, there's so much more. Yeah. So that's the first reason. I mean, that's one reason, but you can pray to seek God's guidance. Like, you want to hear better from God about a decision in your life. Doesn't mean you're going to hear a voice from heaven when you're fasting.
That'd be cool.
But it does. Yeah, it would be cool. But it does clear your mind of some of the other things that are distractions for you, and it helps you to hear from God better as you read His Word. I mean, praying. There's so many other. I mean, I went through 10.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
People can go look at the notes, but 10 different reasons.
Yeah, I think first season of this podcast, one thing we talked about a lot was just how busy and stressed and noisy that our world has gotten, and I think this whole idea of fasting, of sustaining from different things in your life, like it gives you that clarity, that space to think that, this time where you would be doing this, to just kind of rely on God. Like, it really is that time of just kind of quieting things down a little bit, whether it be your stomach or whatever it may be, just quieting things down and relying on God, praying to Him, talking to Him. And it's an awesome time.
Yeah. I think one of the points that God gave me near the end of my preparation was the idea of a combo of because we talked about different types of food fast, partial fast, full, complete fast, or just a part of a day. But then there's also the idea of a soul fast and giving up social media or Netflix or whatever. And I said, I think most of us could do both. Something from one of those areas that gets so much of our attention, and then also something food related. Yeah.
I think one of my favorite points that you made yesterday, and I love this because so long, and I've grown up in the church, so I've heard about fasting. I've never really done it seriously, but I hear about it, and it's been one of those church words that gets thrown around a lot. But it was always like, oh, I'm going to fast this because, man, it's going to be so great, and I'm just going to love it. And for me, it was always like, I'm going to fast social media or TV because I'm going to have so much more, like, just time, and I'm going to love it. And it's like, well, you should fast something that's challenging for you. You should fast something that you're going to miss. That's kind of the point. And you kind of kept coming back to this point that you are kind of teaching yourself to not get everything you want. You're kind of resisting instant gratification and being happy all the time in your flesh, because you're teaching yourself, hey, sometimes life is
not like that. We don't always get, we've trained ourselves in our culture. It's bizarre to not get what you want. Like, we are in our American culture, and we have the means to, whenever we want to go get a Chick-fil-A milkshake, we go get it. I mean, like, I had my last one on Saturday that I'm going to have for a while. But we're used to that. And so to train ourselves not to get what we want, like the thing I mentioned in the sermon, and we're not supposed to publicize everything. We can. It's not like, but you're not doing it in a bragging way. So a thing I said, soul wise, is like, I've gotten myself trained to lay in bed and watch one episode of a sitcom that I've seen, like The Office or something I've seen before, and just make me laugh, but calms me down. I start getting sleepy, hold the remote, turn it off, fall asleep. So last night, tried to not do that. Didn't turn TV on. Laid there, looked over my prayer list, which was good. But the challenge was, I was not falling asleep. Right. And I laid there longer than I normally do. I'm like, okay, I'm laying for an hour. I prayed, I started a couple different YouVersion devotionals, but it was good. My focus was right, but it was like harder to fall asleep because so that's something I'm like, oh, I missed that. Yeah. So
it's kind of breaking the rhythm that we have built into us of just getting what we want, doing what we want.
Yes.
And I think it's awesome.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm really excited about it. And I hope to hear some stories from people. I mean, if 359 plus people are doing this, I mean, God's going to work. And that's bigger picture. I'm excited about how it's going to impact our church. I'm excited for myself, for you, for all of our staff. I'm excited, though, for how it's going to impact our church. And there's teenagers that are doing it. My son and his friend, they were talking about what they're doing. I'm like, that's really cool.
That's awesome. Yeah.
That's good.
Well, I'm excited. I think that whether it be the series that we're starting this year off with, this challenge that we're starting this year off with, or just kind of the ideas that we have for this podcast as a whole, I think 2022 is going to be awesome. And I think it's really easy right now to not feel very hopeful and to not feel like, oh man, well, it just might be this variant, might be this, and it might be. But at the same time, I think that there's so much potential as we start this year and we go into this brand new season of life. So I'm excited. I don't know about you.
I am excited. Like, people ask me, how do you feel about things? Like, well, our church, it's been over a year now. We moved into our new building in December. When you have a new building and you go through a big campaign and you've reopened, we renovated, we added space, and you don't get to have a grand opening, that is like a major loss because there's so much momentum churches get from getting into a new space. And we didn't get to have that, and we still haven't had that. Yeah. And so we're still like, but it's been a whole reset button of like what matters most in ministry, what matters most in people's lives. So anyway, I'm super excited. 2022, I have no idea. Like, no idea what's going to happen. Like,
and that's okay.
Maybe we get to the end of this and we, in February, we're not even talking about COVID anymore.
Right.
Maybe,
that'd be impressive.
That would be like, God, please. That's what maybe we should fast for that.
There you go. We'll fast for that. But I think one of the quotes you had yesterday that was awesome was, suffering is unavoidable. Joy is not. And I think that's kind of like the approach that we have to have is like, we weren't designed to see the future. We have no idea what's coming next month, tomorrow, next hour. We have no idea. Right. So therefore, we just have to set ourselves up in a place of being, okay, God, hey, I have no idea what's going to happen, but I trust you.
That's right.
And so that's kind of at least my approach going into a brand new year.
Absolutely.
Year 3, apparently, of this
year
craziness.
3, we're heading into year 3 of COVID. So we just can't. I mean, if you are waiting for that to be over to find joy in your life, whoa. Yeah, who knows?
But we could apply that to anything. Yep. If you're waiting for any situation to resolve itself, any circumstance, then you could be waiting forever. But if you're waiting, if you decide just to choose to be joyful or choose to live at peace with God, all those things, that's your decision, and you can start right now.
That's right.
So, hey, well, at least I know that with all of the uncertainty, this is going to be happening every week, and we're very excited for that.
Yeah, God willing, we'll be here every week.
And so we're excited.
Yes.
A lot of awesome things, awesome guests, awesome conversations planned for this new season of In All Things. So any closing thoughts or words you want to share as we close today?
No. I just want to thank everybody that's involved in our prayer and fasting. By the time this comes out on Thursday or so, it'll be day 4. And so just keep going and just keep praying, keep fasting, and it's going to be a great, great month.
What if somebody's listening and they didn't know that it started?
Oh, yeah. Like, you can still join us, even though it'd be day 5. You're getting involved. Text the word SCC fast with no spaces to 94,000.
3 zeros.
Yes, 94000. When people tell me it didn't work, I'm like, okay.
Yep.
So, yeah, it's a little awkward for if you're not used to that. But, yeah, you can join. Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, we will see you next week on a brand new episode of the In All Things podcast. Hey, use this time to catch up on old episodes. Get caught up, because you might be wondering, why don't they talk about this? And maybe we already have. So go ahead and listen through. And we have a lot of awesome things planned. Yes. So we'll see you next week, and have a fantastic day. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the In All Things podcast. Our challenge for you today is to send this episode to one person. Seriously, think of somebody right now that could use this conversation and send it to them. If you have any questions, feedback, or topic ideas, please send them to podcast@sycamorecreek.org, and make sure you follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Sycamore Creek Church so that you can always see what's going on in our world. If this conversation helped you at all, make sure you share it, leave a review, and subscribe so that you don't miss out on a single episode. We love you, God loves you, and we'll see you next week on the In All Things podcast.